What is up, guys? Today I am making a tier list ranking all of the NFL teams ahead of the 2024 season. So let's go over the categories. The top one is Super Bowl favorites. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think. These are the teams or team that is just better than everyone else, and I think it should be a favorite to win the Super Bowl. Super Bowl contenders are teams that have a legit shot at making a Super Bowl, but necessarily aren't up to the Super Bowl favorite category. Playoff teams are teams I think that I'm pretty sure are going to make the playoffs, but I don't know how legit their Super Bowl chances are. Fringe playoff teams are teams that I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs, but I don't feel confident saying that they will. Average are just mid teams that'll probably miss out on the playoffs but go 8-9 or 9-8 or something like that. Below average are teams that are not at the bottom but really don't have any threat of making the playoffs, in my opinion. And bad are teams that I think could be the have the number one pick in the 2025 NFL draft that it's going to be a rough season for. Uh, First, we have the New Orleans Saints. This team is just like the epitome of average for me. They have a really good roster, but I just do not believe in Derek Carr. He was not good last year, and I just don't believe in them to make the jump. And I mean, they could win the NFC South, but I can't pick them to. I just think they're incredibly mid. Next is Miami Dolphins. I think they're a playoff team. Um, Part of me wants to put them in fringe playoff teams just because I don't really believe in them either, but I think their talent is good enough to get them into the playoffs. And past that, I don't know, which is why they're in a Super Bowl contender. But I would be pretty surprised if they didn't make the playoffs. Oh, the Baltimore Ravens. I think I'm going to put them in Super Bowl contender. I kind of want to put them in playoff teams, but I think having Lamar Jackson just elevates you to that next tier because I think their roster got a lot worse, or not a lot, but a, a little worse. And I don't really believe in the offensive line, and the defense still has questions. But I mean, you have a two-time MVP at quarterback, and it's just hard for me to not put them at Super Bowl contender, especially after the season they had last year, regardless if I have some questions about them going into the 2024 season. The Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to put them at contender too. I think they're a true contender. Um, I don't know. Like I said in my previous video, I just believe in the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow is really good and the roster is good. And when this team is on, they are really good. And you've seen it in the playoffs. And I would not be surprised if the Bengals are in the Super Bowl again. And I think if I had to pick a team other than the Chiefs to make it out of the AFC, it would be the Bengals just because of the Joe Burrow effect in the playoffs, I guess. And I think that they have a legit shot to win the Super Bowl, even coming off Joe Burrow being injured. The Broncos, I think they are probably going to be the worst team in the NFL. Bad. This team doesn't have a lot of talent at all. I don't really know what their direction is. They have a young quarterback, but a kind of a untalented roster that's a little bit older. I would not be surprised if this team had the first pick in the 2025 NFL draft, and I just don't really believe in them at all to do anything. I mean, I guess Sean Payton is the one caveat because I think he's a good coach, but also he's too stubborn sometimes, and I think that led to the Bo Nix pick, and I just don't think this team is going to be very good. The Giants, they could be below average or bad. I'm going to put them in bad. It's once again, it's the talent and combined with a bad quarterback. I mean, Danny Dimes was really bad last year, and I know the offensive line was bad, but I still don't know if it's great. You still have Evan Neal playing tackle, who was awful. You have Malik Neighbors, which is good, but you almost have no receivers. I guess Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyde are okay, but not really any other targets that I trust. You lost Saquon Barkley. The back half of the secondary isn't good. The cornerback and safety room is really young and inexperienced. The one area that I think this team could excel in is on the defensive front. Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns are both solid, good pass rushers. Dexter Lawrence is an all-pro nose tackle, but the lack of talent on the roster coupled with a question mark at quarterback, lands them in the bad territory. I don't have much faith in them to be anything good, but I still think they could be below average, like a 6, 7 win team. Uh, Next up is the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of this banks on JJ McCarthy, I guess. My guess would be that JJ doesn't play or doesn't play well his rookie year, but I still think the roster is pretty good, so I'd put them at below average. I'm pretty sure they went 7-10 last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did that again. I feel like 7 wins is a good benchmark for them. They have Justin Jefferson, they have Jordan Addison, they have TJ Hawkinson, they signed Aaron Jones, and they have Christian Darrisaw on the offensive line. They have a decent offensive line, or a questionable one. They have a good other tackle, but their interior has questions. The defense is okay. Their secondary is really bad. They got Dallas Turner and Jonathan Grenard. Their linebackers are okay, but I just don't think the quarterback play is going to elevate him. I think Sam Darnold is going to start the year and he's just going to be so-so. And because of those good weapons, I don't think the offense is going to be bad. But and Brian Flores is a good defensive coordinator, so I'm like flip-flopping whether I should put them in average. But I don't know. The way I just see them, it's just like a 7 win team is where an 8 win team is maybe their ceiling or nine. So I'm going to put them in below average because I think they're closer to that 7 win mark. Next up is the Los Angeles Rams. They're a fringe playoff team for me. I think they'll make the playoffs in a weaker NFC, but I'm not entirely sure. If Stafford is healthy, I think they'll make the playoffs, but there's no guarantee about that with his back and just how old he is. This team, I liked what they did in the draft. They got Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, the Florida State pass rushers, and added to a defense that needed help. But I still have questions about their secondary. They got cooked a lot of the years and a lot of last year, and their secondary is still relatively untalented. But if I had to choose now, I think I would put them in the playoffs, but I'm not confident banking on that they will, so I think they'll be there in the fringe playoff team tier. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm gonna put them in fringe playoff team. I think this team is better than they were last year. Their weakness was on the offensive line, and I think they got quite a bit better with the selection of Graham Barton and pass rusher too. They lost Shaq Barrett and they drafted Braswell in the second round from Alabama. And this team was pretty good. They were really good at the end of the year. They challenged the Lions in the divisional round, and I think this is a legit team. And I believe in Baker Mayfield. There's are questions of him without the offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, who went to the Panthers. But I think this team is good. I mean, he has Mike Evans, who's a true number one, and Chris Godwin, who's a high end number two. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I should maybe put them in average. We can maybe come back to that, I guess. But right now, I'm going to put them in fringe playoff team. The Detroit Lions, they're a easy contender for me. They proved that last year. They frankly should have made the Super Bowl, but played a close game against the 49ers. They got significantly better, especially on the defensive end without really losing anyone. And I believe in the coaching staff. There's been continuity in the coaching staff with Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And I think this is the year where the Lions are maybe expected to win the Super Bowl coming into the season. The Chicago Bears, I'm just going to put them in average. I think this is a really talented team, actually. And if Caleb Williams is like a mid quarterback his rookie year, I think they can make the playoffs. But I am not going to put them in the fringe playoff tier because of that volatility of a rookie quarterback. I know he has Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. It's like the best receiving core in the NFL. And their defense played good last year, but I don't know. I still don't necessarily believe that they're all that talented on the defensive end. So I just think they're going to be average. I think 8-9, 9-8. And that would be a success for the Bears if they were even competing for a wild card spot in week 18. And yeah, I in a weaker NFC, I could see the Bears making the playoffs, but like I said, I'm not ready to put them in that playoff tier yet because they haven't really shown that they can be there. The Niners, easy Super Bowl contender for me. I don't think they're necessarily a Super Bowl favorite because of one specific team that we're going to talk about that is just head and shoulders above the rest of the NFL. But the Niners are really talented. They're still really talented. They have Kyle Shanahan at head coach. As long as they have Shanahan, they're going to be a playoff team. They lost some talent this year, but I don't know. I don't think that changes. I still think they are a true Super Bowl contender, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the Super Bowl once again. The Philadelphia Eagles, talent wise, they are a Super Bowl contender, but I'm going to put them in playoff teams just because I can't trust them at all. They absolutely collapsed at the back half of last year. And this team is so talented. Like, they might have the best all around roster in the NFL, but I just can't trust them as a true Super Bowl contender until I see them shake that bad juju that they had last year. And I know that they got rid of Matt Patricia and all this, and that's why I have them in playoff teams and not fringe playoff teams because I think they're definitely gonna make the playoffs. But I just have a trust issue with them, and I don't. I'm not 100% sure that they are going to be back to the 2022 form when they went to the Super Bowl, or even the first half of 2023 when they were like 9-1 or 10-1 or whatever they were. So yeah, Philly is, I think, a solid playoff team for me, but that ceiling is higher than I think the Dolphins. The Las Vegas Raiders, I think the roster is pretty bad, but this is a bet on the coach. I'm going to put them in the below average tier. I love Antonio Pierce. They performed pretty well last year after he took over for Josh McDaniels. They outperformed their expectations for that back half. And I remember they beat the Chiefs on Christmas, which was awesome for them. And they have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, which is why I'm not projecting them to even be a real playoff team. But I do like what they're building, and I think maybe they get 7, 8 wins in this upcoming year and maybe a top 10 pick and they draft a quarterback. And I think they're set up for the future. But I'm a fan of what the Raiders are doing. But because of that quarterback situation and just the overall questions about the team, I think they're going to be a 7-win team along with the Vikings. Green Bay Packers, this one's pretty easy. They're a solid playoff team for me. Jordan Love was awesome at the back half of last year, and he had a really good playoff run against the Cowboys and the Niners, minus that last interception against the Niners. But I think this team is going to be competing with the Lions for the NFC North. And although I still think the Lions are a tier above them, the Packers are definitely right there, and they would probably be my fifth wild card team or my fifth team in the playoffs, the first wild card team if I had to choose. And yeah, they gotten better over the offseason. Love is going to get better, and the weapons around him are going to get better. And Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed, and they got Josh Jacobs, and the defense got better, and they weren't that good last year, but they got better. And I think that Green Bay's expectation is they're going to be a playoff team this year, and I think that's fair. The Washington Commanders, I just think they're going to be bad. I don't know. I have questions about that offensive line and how well they can protect Jaden Daniels. And if Jaden Daniels isn't ready or something happens to him, it's Marcus Mariota. And the roster isn't good to start with. Their offensive line is, like I said, is just not very good. They have good defensive tackles, but they traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young, so their edge rusher is a big question mark. And the back half, the secondary, is not that great. It's really young. I guess there's room to grow there because they're all younger, higher draft picks, but I just can't really bet on them to be anything other than bad this year. But they could be below average. And excuse me, there's a lot of volatility with that because Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback and he could be really good and he could single-handedly elevate them to like 7, 8, 9 wins. Probably not 9, but 7 to 8 wins. But I wasn't too high on Daniels. I wasn't as high on him as a second overall pick. So I don't know. I just think the Commanders are just going to be a bad team, which is fine. You're not really expecting anything this year as long as Jaden Daniels progresses. Next up is the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't know. I feel like I should. They're. I'm gonna put them at below average. I like this team. I like what they're going. They actually like what they're doing. Sorry. They actually remind me a lot of the Lions in that progression where they were bad at the um, first half of last year, and then they started picking it up a little bit. And I think you can compare them to the Lions in 2021. They were really bad, but they showed heart and they ended up beating some teams at the end of the year. Like I think they could have a 7, 8 win season. Kyler Murray is a top half of the league quarterback. I feel like people just forget about him. Him and Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be exciting to watch. And it's the same thing with the Raiders. I like the coaching staff. I think they have heart, which means a lot. I mean, it's a cliche, but that culture matters, and can elevate the floor of a team significantly. And this defense is still bad, but I just don't think they're going to be as bad as last year. And I'm looking forward to see what the Cardinals do in the upcoming season. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to put them at average. I kind of want to put them at fringe playoff team, but I don't know. Their roster is really good, I guess. No, I guess it is really good, but you're betting on Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And I'm actually higher on those two guys than other people are, at least in the Pittsburgh offense, because it was just so bad last year and they made the playoffs. But I don't know. It's kind of a Mike Tomlin, like, oh, he has to be 9-8. He can't be below 500. And I don't know. I just think this team is average. I don't think they're anything great. The defense is good, but the offense is meh. They traded away Deontay Johnson, and now they have George Pickens and Roman Wilson, and really, that's it. I think they have Van Jefferson, but you're really betting on either Van Jefferson or Roman Wilson to be really good this year, or else Fields or Wilson or whoever it's going to be is just going to be chucking it to George Pickens. And yeah, I don't know. I just think they're an average team. I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs, but I'm not expecting them to. The Buffalo Bills, I'm going to say they're a playoff team. I don't think they're as talented as the other teams in this tier, but Josh Allen, that's it. Josh Allen is a top three quarterback in the NFL, and I think he can elevate a team. And I still think the Bills are going to make the playoffs this year. I, but yeah, like I said, it's just Josh Allen. The team isn't as good as they were in the last couple of years. They had to cut or trade everyone away, but I don't know. I think Sean McDermott's a good coach. The defense is going to be solid, and you got Keon Coleman and a Khalil Shakir, who I like, and Curtis Samuel, who I think was an underrated signing. And I don't know. I think this team is probably might be like the sixth wild card team in the AFC, seventh, but I just have a hard time seeing them missing the playoffs. The Atlanta Falcons. Um, I'm gonna put them at average. I'm not a Falcons believer, really. I think they're okay. The offense is probably going to be pretty good. The defense, not so much. The secondary is not good. The pass rushers are questionable. They have Grady Jarrett and David Animata, but other than that, it's pretty rough. They don't really have any edge rushers. And I don't know. I just think the Falcons are kind of overrated. And I think people are expecting Kirk Cousins to come back and be a top 10 quarterback, which is the high end of his abilities anyway. And is he going to be ready for week one? I don't know. I guess they have a good backup plan in Penix, but I don't know. I think this team is going to look back at that eighth pick and be like, man, we just kind of punted on this year selecting Penix. Like, I don't think Penix was a bad pick as much as everyone else did because I believe that he's a good quarterback. But you could have used Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, or Romo Dunze, or Jared Verse, or Terrion Arnold, or Quinyon Mitchell. Like, all of those guys would be significant contributors this year. And I think the Falcons are just kind of a mid team and I think they're gonna miss out on uh, high opportunities, I guess, if that makes sense, just because they are looking in the future so much. So yeah, I think the Falcons are just mid. I don't think they're gonna be as good as everyone expects them to be. The Seattle Seahawks, I think this team is the definition of just meh too. I'm interested to see what their direction is. Um, Geno Smith is okay. He's good enough. The offense, they have good weapons and DK, Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jack Smith, and Jigba. Good running back, Kenneth Walker, okay offensive line. The defense is okay, but they have Mike McDonald, who is a great defensive-minded head coach, and I think he can elevate that defense that has struggled in the past couple of years. But I'm not really ready to expect them to make the playoffs, so I just think they're kind of a mid team who could make the playoffs, but also is probably gonna have like 8 wins, maybe 9 wins, miss out. I'm not sure, but they're just pretty average to me. Uh, Next up, the New England Patriots. They're pretty bad. I think they're going to not have a great year. The only thing to this is I really love Drake May. I think he should have been the second overall pick. And if they let him run the offense, if he's ready, I think he could. I would not be surprised if he had like a Justin Herbert type year. Like that was like who he were. That was my comp to him. That's who he reminded me of. Maybe not as good as him, but somewhere around there, maybe a little worse to elevate the Patriots to like a average record. But this team, this offense isn't really good. There's not really any established weapons. I maybe I don't even remember if they have Juju Smith-Schuster to be honest anymore, but they have Jalen Polk and Kendrick Bourne and Javon Baker, who they drafted at receiver, and I don't know. This team just isn't talented. Their defense is good, but I have questions about how good their defense is going to be because they lost Belichick. Regardless of what you think of Belichick in his last couple of years, he's probably the greatest defensive coach ever. And I wouldn't rule out the Patriots just having a drop off because they're losing that. I still believe in Gerard Mayo, but I don't know how much of that was Mayo and how much of that was Belichick because Belichick was such a defensive minded head coach. The Cleveland Browns, this is the definition of a fringe playoff team to me. This defense is so good. I think they're the best defense in the NFL. But I mean, Deshaun Watson just has to be okay. Like he's been bad and or injured, and he just needs to be okay. And this team can easily make the playoffs. They made the playoffs with Joe Flacco easily, and I mean, would have won a couple divisions, but they were in the same division as the Ravens. I think they had 11 wins. And this team is just really talented. Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Nick Chubb is coming back healthy. A good offensive line. Like there's few weaknesses on this team. And I think that the wild card game from against the Texans, I'm not really putting too much into that just because we all knew that Joe Flacco was going to collapse sometime. I guess like it was a Cinderella run and everyone was having fun with it, but I everyone knew that it was going to flame out at some point. So, and I still think the defense is really good. So I just think CJ Stroud is that good as well. The Houston Texans, as I was hyping up CJ Stroud, I'm gonna probably be lower on them than everyone else. I think the Texans are an easy playoff team. They're likely gonna win their division. I have questions about the team other than CJ Stroud. I think the offense is going to be really good, specifically the passing game. I think there's a lot of questions along the offensive line, and they got Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon's pretty good. And the defense, that second cornerback position is questionable. They have like Jeff Okuda and CJ Henderson, all the 2020 top 10 cornerback bust from the 2020 draft. And I don't know. Their interior defensive line isn't good, isn't great, I guess. They lost Sheldon Rankins. And I don't know. People have been like projecting this team I've seen to like maybe be the 1 or 2 seed in the AFC. And although I can see that because CJ Stroud is just so damn good, I don't know if they're there yet with the Ravens, Bengals, Lions, and Niners, which I've seen all like do that and go to a championship game, and I I think I can be proven wrong about the Texans. I wouldn't be surprised if they were better than I thought they would be, but I just don't feel comfortable putting them in that tier yet, the true Super Bowl contender tier. Kansas City Chiefs, they're Super Bowl favorites. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, they're just better than everyone else. And it's just impossible not to have them as the only Super Bowl favorite because they've won 2 in a row. That was in a couple of years that weren't even supposed to be their year. It's supposed to be a couple of like retooling years. And it's just absurd. Patrick Mahomes is absurd. I almost don't even care like what they did in the offseason or where their weaknesses are because I've analyzed it and overanalyzed it and all this stuff and it like doesn't matter. they're going to probably win the Super Bowl again, and they're going to be in the AFC Championship, and they're probably going to be in the Super Bowl, and they're probably going to win the Super Bowl. And I'm a Lions fan, and we have Super Bowl aspirations this year for sure. But it almost doesn't even matter because I just think the Chiefs are going to win. Like if the Lions make the Super Bowl, cool. But I mean, I don't care how good the Lions roster is and the Chiefs roster is. Like I feel like the Chiefs are going to win just because of Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, there's not much else to say. The Chiefs are really good if you haven't heard these last couple of years. Dallas Cowboys. I think they're firmly a playoff team. I expect this team to make the playoffs. I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders. I think they missed their win. I think last year was their window, and they just missed it. And they choked against the Packers, and I was not surprised just because they're kind of chokers anyway. But they still have really good teams. Like they choke in the playoffs, but people make fun of them. But they get like 9 to 12 wins like every year and make the playoffs. And I have questions about this team after this year with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott not getting extended and all this stuff. But this year, their top end talent is just really good, and I think they're firmly a playoff team. Um, I think the Eagles are better, but I would not be surprised if they won the division again and were like the 2 or 3 seed. But it's impossible for me to put them in the Super Bowl contender tier because I mean they haven't made it to an AFC Championship game since what like Troy Aikman was their quarterback, and they've had years in the playoffs, like a lot with Romo and Prescott. And I just can't put them in the Super Bowl contender tier because they have shown nothing in the playoffs to suggest to me that they should be there other than beating a bad Buccaneers team with like the corpse of Tom Brady in 2022. So I still think the Cowboys are good, but they're just firmly a playoff team for me. The Chargers, they're below average. This is another one where I've seen a lot of people project the Chargers to like be a top half of the league team, and I don't know if I really believe that. This team got a lot worse, and rightfully so. Like it was the right moves to try and move on from everyone because that it just wasn't working with Herbert. They weren't even good when he was healthy that year before, and they didn't. They got blew that lead to the Jags in the 2022 playoffs and then missed out on the playoffs before. So it was just time to blow it up and build around Herbert again. But this team is the defense, sorry, in specific is just not good. They have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. And like that's it. Like Asante Samuel Jr. and Derwin James, I guess, are pretty good, but like that's it. They don't have like a very talented defense, and their offensive line is okay. They got 2 bookend tackles probably, and their receivers are bad. And I mean, I guess Quentin Johnson has a high ceiling. Like, I don't know. Josh Palmer's okay. Lad McConkey is good, but I don't know. I see people projecting this team to be good, and I just don't really know if I believe that. I get that Jim Harbaugh is a good coach. I'm a Michigan State fan, so like I know that he's a good coach. He's beaten the crap out of my team a couple times in a row, but I just don't know how much you can elevate this roster or how much you can elevate this roster. I guess they have Justin Herbert and a good coach, which, like a combination of that can elevate the team more, but this roster isn't very talented. And I think 2025, I really think they can be a wild card team. Unfortunately, they're in the same division as the Chiefs, so it's hard to project them to be anything more than a wild card team. But I don't know. I just think this is going to be a tone setter year for the Chargers. They're going to have struggles, but I think they'll, with Justin Herbert, they'll get 7, 8 wins, something like that. But I don't think they'll be in playoff contention late in the season. The New York Jets, I think they're a playoff team. Part of me just wants to put fringe playoff team because so much of the success, in fact, all of it, depends on a 40-year-old quarterback with coming off a torn Achilles. But at the same time, I he just has to be decent. Like he just has to be okay, and this team is gonna make the playoffs. And I think Aaron Rodgers is gonna be okay. Like even if he played like how he played in 2022 with the Packers, where he's coming off those back-to-back MVP years, and he just wasn't that good. Like that is going to get the Jets into the playoffs. They have a really good defense. They have a decent offensive line. They have a couple good weapons in Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams. And I don't know. I really believe in the Jets this time around. I didn't last year, but this time I do. I think the Jets are going to win the AFC East. I'm big believers in them. And yeah, I don't know. I just think the Jets are going to be good. Carolina Panthers, bad. I really believe in Bryce Young. I really think he's going to be good. I'll probably die on that hill just because I loved him so much in the pre-draft process, and even watching last year, like it's almost unfair to evaluate him because of how bad it was. I mean, he had no protection, he had no receivers, he was throwing to the corpse of Adam Thielen, and it just I don't know. I believe in him, but this team isn't good. Their defense lost a lot. They lost Jeremy Chin, Frankie Louvu, um, some other guys that I can't think off the top of my head, but yeah, I don't know. This they're just probably going to be bad, but it's an important year for the Panthers. I think they can as if they get 4 or 5 wins, because or like even 6 wins, like 5 to 6 wins. But Bryce Young shows that he is the guy. This is a successful year for the Panthers, and you can build on that. But for this year, you just want to know that you want to know if Bryce Young is the guy, and I think that will be determined after this year. Because if he has another bad year, I don't know if he is the choice there anymore. But then again, I mean, the Panthers are so unpredictable. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, they're not going to be very good. The Tennessee Titans. I am going to put them in the below average tier. I think this team could be frisky. I believe in them. Um, I don't know. I didn't like Will Levis in the pre-draft process at all. I thought he was a second round quarterback, and that's where I ended up going. And now I'm high on them. It's the same thing with the Jets. These teams that I haven't been high on, I'm suddenly like, oh, like they could be good. And I kind of like what the Titans are doing. You can have discussions about what their long-term plans are because their top three wide receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Boyd, who are like old, not like old, they are old. And you can have conversations about that, but I think that is good for the Titans. That's good getting Tony Pollard there. They're building the offensive line. It still might be not that great, but if it's average, that's good. And then I think their defense is okay. But I don't know. I feel like if they had Mike Vrabel, I might put them in the average just because I think that defense is going to be elevated because of he's such a good coach. But I don't know. 7 wins, maybe. That 8 wins. Yeah, I think 7, 8 wins is a good benchmark for them, and I'm excited to see if Will Levis is legit or not because he had a very up and down year. And yeah, the Indianapolis Colts, they're just average to me. They almost won the AFC South. If that running back Goodson, I believe his name was, didn't drop the ball, they might have been hosting a playoff game. But I don't know. I think they're okay. Their roster is okay. I really liked what they did in the draft. I like Anthony Richardson. I think if he's healthy, this team has a legit shot to make the playoffs. If he's healthy, he got hurt like 10 times last year in 4 games, which isn't good. But yeah, the Colts have a decent roster. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, AD Mitchell, I think, has a good receiving core. Um, they have Latu. I really like the pick. Jonathan Taylor. They have a good offensive line, and I believe in Anthony Richardson. This is why I'm putting him here, but it all depends if Richardson is healthy. Because if he's not again, you're relying on Joe Flacco to make another playoff run. Next is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're going to be in the average tier too. Um, Trevor Lawrence is good. It's not necessarily about Trevor Lawrence. I like Trevor Lawrence. It's more about the the weapons around him. Uh, like Gabe Davis, cool. Like what they said, like 3 years, 50 million. I don't know about that. I like Brian Thomas Jr. a lot. Christian Kirk is a reliable target. Travis Etienne is a solid running back. The defense could be good. They have some secondary issues. I feel like saying this about a lot of teams. Their pass rush is okay. They have good linebackers, but their offensive line is a big question, and they have a good quarterback, which kind of makes me want to put them in the fringe playoff teams, but I just don't know if they're better than like the Falcons or the Seahawks. So I think I'm going to stick them in average. This is the year. I guess that's dumb because Trevor Lawrence is going to get extended, but I think this is the year where we're going to find out if Trevor Lawrence is the 10th to 16th or 15th best quarterback in the NFL, or like a top 10 to 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I they could make the wild card. I'm not really sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, which is why I'm putting them in there, but I'm not expecting them to. So, yeah, I just think that they're average. All right, that is it for my tier rankings for the 2024 NFL season. I didn't rank these teams like specifically in these tiers. I just kind of lumped them into clusters because I wanted to avoid power rankings and, like tedious rankings between the teams. But if you agreed or disagreed with anything I said, let me know down below. I'm interested to hear what you think. And that's it for now. So I'll see you later.